In a competitive market, the right price is only part of the equation. You found the house, you love it. Your agent sends you the offer, and there are like 40 fields to fill out. Suddenly you realize you have no idea what any of this means. What's the right price? What's the right earnest money? Should you waive inspection? What is an escalation clause, and is it going to make you look desperate? Every first time buyer hits this wall. And if you freeze, or you just copy what someone else did, you could either lose the house to someone who knew what they were doing, or you could win it and immediately wonder if you paid too much. Today we're going to fix that. This is Signed and Funded, and I'm Scott Alfano. Let's talk about how to actually put together a winning offer. Today, I want to help first-time buyers understand how to construct a competitive offer, price, terms, contingencies, and earnest money, so that you can act decisively without panic or overpaying. I'm a real estate agent and a licensed loan officer, which means I've sat across the table on the buying side and the financing side a lot in the last 10 years. I know what sellers respond to, I know what lenders look at, and I know how those two things intersect in an offer. We're in the middle of our first time buyer series right now. Episodes 5 through 9 are specifically built for people buying their first home. So if you haven't heard the earlier ones, go back. We've covered pre-approval, down payments, what programs exist in Washington state, and the true cost of home ownership. This episode is where all of that starts to come together. Because once you're pre-approved and you found a house you want, the offer is the moment. It's the thing that determines whether you get the keys or send a congrats text to somebody else. So let's make sure that you're the one ending up with the keys. Let's break down what an offer actually is, because there's a lot more to it than just the price that you're willing to pay for the home. While not the end-all be-all, your offer package starts with the purchase price. This is the number that you are willing to pay for the home. How do you know it's right? Your agent is going to pull comps, which are comparable sales in the neighborhood over the last roughly 30 to 90 days. If you live in an area that's a little bit more rural, they might go a little bit further back in time to get those comps. So that's your anchor. Second, the earnest money deposit, or EMD. EMD is the money that you put down immediately when your offer is accepted to show the seller that you're serious. It typically goes into escrow and gets applied to your down payment or closing costs at close. In Seattle, 1 to 3% of the purchase price is pretty common. So on a $700,000 home, that's roughly $7,000 to $21,000. The higher the earnest money, the more serious you look. But also know this. If you back out of the deal for a reason not covered by a contingency in your offer package, you can lose that money. So now third, contingencies. A contingency is a condition that must be met for the sale to go through. And if it's not, you can walk away and keep your earnest money. There are three main contingencies here. Number one, the inspection contingency. You have the right to get the home inspected and renegotiate or exit based on what's found. Financing contingency. If your loan fails to go through for a legitimate reason, you can exit the contract. And lastly, the appraisal contingency. If the home appraises for less than the purchase price, you can renegotiate or walk. Here's the tension. Contingencies protect you, but they also make your offer look riskier to a seller. In a hot market, some buyers waive one or all of them to be more competitive. And I'm not going to tell you to do that without talking to your agent and your loan officer first, because the risk profile is different for every buyer and for every property. Fourth, the closing timeline. Most transactions close in 30 to 45 days. Sellers sometimes do have preferences, though. A seller who's already bought their next home might want to close quickly. A seller who's waiting to find a place to move might want a longer timeline. Or maybe even a rent back. They can stay after close and pay you rent for a few weeks. Flexibility on timeline is a real negotiating lever that costs you nothing. Fifth, the escalation clause. The escalation clause is a tool that says I'm offering X, but if another offer comes in higher, I'll automatically beat it by Y, up to a maximum of Z. To put real numbers on this instead of XYZ, let's say you want to offer $600,000 on a house, but if anybody else comes in with an offer up to $620,000, you're willing to beat their offer by $1,000. So your official offer is $600,000, but if need be, you'd technically be willing to go up to $621,000. The escalation clause is useful in multiple offer situations because it does keep you competitive without requiring you to just throw up the random number immediately. But it also does signal to the seller that you expect competition, and that can ultimately prompt them to call for highest and best offers before responding. So use it strategically, not reflexively. Not every home needs an escalation clause with an offer. Don't just throw it into every offer that you make. So that's your offer: price, earnest money, contingencies, timeline, escalation clause, if applicable. Now let's talk about how to make it actually win. As a side note, I don't really care what market you're in, wherever you are, your agent needs to be calling the listing agent before you put an offer in. Every time I make that call and I know that my buyer is serious about trying to put in an offer on the property, I'm pretty straight up, and I don't think many agents are doing this. I'll call the listing agent, ring ring. Hey, I know obviously price is pretty paramount to the offer, but I saw that the home is staged and it's vacant, so they've already moved out. What kind of timeline is the seller looking for to make our offer as attractive as it can be? I say that straight up. There's no reason not to. Most agents don't make that call. Either they're afraid of talking to the other agent, they don't want to seem too eager. I don't really think that's the case. I don't think that is an actual issue. So I call and I say, "Hey, aside from the price, what else do they need? Do they want a 20-day close? Do they want a 60-day close? Do they need to rent it back, as I talked about a couple of minutes ago? What are some elements that might help this out?" If they need cash to get to their next home, I could say, "Hey, my buyer might be willing to release 50% of their earnest money deposit immediately. Is that something that would help your sellers out?" And that's not something that I will just throw out there out of nowhere. If the listing agent starts to talk to me about how the sellers need to get to their next home in another city, and they can't start moving until this sale happens, little things like that shows that you're listening. It's not your job as the buyer to know that. It should be your agent's job, but most agents don't really know what they're doing. So be keen on those little items that will differentiate your offer without just upping the price. Everything I just mentioned about the timeline, earnest money deposit, releasing a little bit of earnest money, none of that changes your actual offer price. None of that changes cash out of your pocket, but it's all stuff that makes you different than the other offer that might even be $5,000 or $10,000 higher. That is how you win an offer without just throwing your wallet at the seller. Okay, so now we've talked about the pieces that go into an offer. The next question is, what makes one offer beat another? In Seattle, the market's been competitive for years. That doesn't mean that every house gets 12 offers, but the well-priced ones in good condition and a desirable neighborhood is going to move fast. When you're competing, here's what matters. Number one, price, calibrated to the market. Comps are going to tell you what the home is worth. Offer at or slightly above list if the comps support it. Don't get emotional and go 10% over list on a house that's not going to appraise. Either you're going to blow your budget or you're going to create an appraisal gap problem. Ask your agent to run the comps with you, not for you. Understand the numbers, where he or she came up with them, and if you agree. It's okay not to agree. Everybody runs their comps a little bit differently. And that is why real estate agents are not appraisers. We all have a different formula. There are a lot of standards that agents should be adhering to when they're making comps in terms of adjusting for square footage, adjusting for number of bedrooms and bathrooms. Ideally, you're only going to use homes that have the same number of bedrooms and bathrooms, but if you're outside of a city, that's not always going to be possible. So have your agent not just give you the comp number, have them run through what they actually did. Because if they take $100,000 off a house because of a bedroom, or they add $100,000 to a house because it has 2 extra bathrooms, those numbers don't make sense. I don't care what market you're in. That's not right. Even if you don't know how to run comps yourself, give it the sniff test. Have your agent walk you through their comp process, and you'll be able to really know with your gut whether they're doing a good job or not. Number 2 in your package, a clean pre-approval letter, not a pre-qualification. I covered this in episode 5, but I'll say it here again super quick. A pre-qualification doesn't mean much of anything. It's all verified by statement. And if you try to make an offer with a pre-qualification letter, it's probably just going to be deleted and thrown in the trash. Without a pre-approval letter, realistically, I don't care what market you're in, you are not going to have your offer looked at, and you will not have a chance to win that house. A pre-approval letter comes from a lender who's actually verified your income, your assets, and your credit. And again, that's what sellers want to see. If you curtail your pre-approval letter to the actual house that you want to buy, it goes a long way. And any loan officer, any mortgage broker is going to help you out and make that letter for you completely for free. So there's no reason not to ask for that for every offer that you make. Number 3, reduce your contingencies thoughtfully. And I said this earlier, contingencies aren't automatically bad, but every time you include one, it's a condition that the seller has to accept. So if you've already done a thorough pre-inspection, here in Seattle, it's really common that the seller will do a pre-inspection before listing the house. If you're comfortable enough and it looks like it makes sense, waiving the inspection period is a huge contingency to get past. I'm not gonna give actual advice without knowing the home that you're actually putting an offer in on. But here in the Seattle market, offering to waive inspection is pretty common. And at that, if you have inspection, having a really, really tight window, maybe 3 days, sometimes 5. But I think here in this city, the days of a 15-day inspection, maybe even a 10-day inspection are kind of gone. If you're doing that, you are giving your offer a disservice. And if you're willing to put up $800,000 for the house, your agent should be able to get you prepared with an inspection very, very quickly. That, hey, the day after the offer is accepted, you have an inspector in there. And within 48 hours of the seller saying yes, you already know whether you want to continue or not based on that inspection report that you get back. So again, it's great for you to know because you should know every part of how to purchase a house for yourself. But this is work for your agent that your agent should know how to do as well. If you ask them how quickly they can get an inspector into the house and they don't really have an answer for you, I would maybe start to consider looking for another agent. So if you've already done a thorough pre-inspection or the seller's already done a thorough pre-inspection, you might be comfortable with a shorter inspection period, like I just mentioned, or just completely waiving it. If you have strong financing and a big down payment, your lender might be confident to let you talk about a shortened financing contingency window. This isn't necessarily for you to decide. It is for your team, your lender, and your agent to decide. So work with them on this if that's a contingency that can be adjusted in a favorable way in the seller's eyes. Number 4, your earnest money. More is better within reason. So if you're competing with other buyers, you can put down 2 to 3% instead of 1. That's a signal that says, I'm not going to walk. 2021, 2022 was a very hot market across the country. At that time, people were waiving everything and offers were very, very aggressive. I remember one in particular, the house was going for about $800,000 and we put $150,000 into earnest money. So not as the down payment, just into earnest money. And to make the offer go through, we actually waived almost all of it. I think we waived about $125,000 of the $150,000. And again, this wasn't a $3 million house. This was $800,000 and putting 6 figures into earnest money. So we were over 10% just on the earnest money deposit and released 6 figures of it early. My buyers wanted that house. It was in great shape, something that they could grow into. It was a newer build, so there was no risk of older cast iron pipes or kinds of elements that you sometimes might have to worry about with a home built in the 40s, 50s, or 60s. They were confident they wanted to get the house, and this was how we made that happen. And it was extremely aggressive. And my buyers were comfortable with it, and they're still in that house today. It's been 4 or 5 years. They're still there. Home is appreciated hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars by now, and they are in an amazing financial position. And that came from being extremely aggressive during the offer phase. And again, I'm not saying do that every time. I bring that up because it was rare. I remember it from 5 years ago. It's the only time I've ever had an offer that was that aggressive and that risky for the buyer. And I had to really sit down and make sure that they understood what it meant that we were doing at every stage and how that 1 month of being pending, that short-term uncertainty and realistically pain of knowing how much money was already out the door if the sale didn't go through. They understood it, they were ready, they were aggressive, and they wanted the home, and that's what we ended up getting. So again, I'm not saying do that every time. And 2026 is not the same market as 2021 or 2020, but in that case, that's what it took to win. And I remember it well. The buyers remember it very fondly, and they are stoked to still be in that house today. So, all I'm saying is understand your market, make sure your agent understands your market, and know the difference mentally between whether you're trying to win a home as a nice to have, hey, if we can get it and do XYZ, that would be great, versus my family needs to have this home. This is the one. I don't care what it takes. We're moving into it. Make sure it happens. Those are two super different conversations. And if you know the difference yourself of how you want to win the house ahead of time, that's going to help your agent curtail your offer, and it's going to help your own expectations of your win rate. If you're trying to put in an offer as a nice to have, you're not going to win as often as if you're trying to put in an offer that you need this house and this needs to win. Knowing that ahead of time is going to help your expectations, and it's going to help your entire offer package in a way that makes sure that you win when you have to, and gives you a pretty good chance of winning when it's not the end of the world if you don't get it. Next part of the package, number 5, the personal letter. I'm not going to expand on it very much, but I am not a fan of the personal letter. I haven't had a client use it in probably 6 or 7 years. I don't intend on ever letting a client use it moving forward. It's usually more trouble than it's worth. I'll leave it at that. If you have an agent that wants you to do that, that would also make me question that agent. Number 6, the offer presentation itself. So your agent calling the listing agent before submitting, confirming that they've received it, asking about seller preferences. It's professional to professional relationship that matters more than most people realize. A smooth, organized, well-presented offer with a pre-approval letter from a credible lender tells the agent this one's not going to fall apart. And I touched on this a little bit earlier, making sure that your agent is comfortable enough to talk to the other agent, figure out what is important in the sale other than the price itself, and get that into your offer if it makes sense for you as well. The other piece, just having a well-organized offer. An offer can sometimes be 6, 7, 8 different PDF files. I will always condense them into one file in a very specific order, either page 1 or the very last page being the pre-approval letter, and then the offer, and then the contingencies, and then any supplements, all going in a very specific order. But like I said, turning a whole bunch of documents into one PDF and just giving a 1-paragraph explanation when the offer is sent by email to the seller's agent, all of that makes life easy for the other side. And realistically, when a seller's agent is trying to figure out what offer makes sense or who they want to work with, your agent looking organized is a great way to make your offer look different, even if it's exactly the same as the next person's. The little things make a huge difference, and you'd be surprised at what little tedious elements could sometimes make sure that you get the $1 million house or the next person gets the $1 million house. This little stuff matters, and you have to talk to your agent about it. I do want to go back. I want to say one more thing about the financing piece. This is where I see first-time buyers leaving money and opportunities on the table. The strength of your offer is directly tied to the strength of your financing. So if you're working with an out-of-state lender that no one's heard of, or a big bank known for slow turnarounds, that matters in a competitive situation. So a local lender with a track record, a loan officer who's going to pick up the phone and give sellers confidence. When I'm working with a buyer, I'll call the listing agent directly and let them know the file is clean, I can close on time. And that's the kind of reassurance that's real. It wins deals. Your loan officer needs to be prepared, willing, and actually eager to talk to the seller's agent. If they're only talking to you or only talking to you and your buyer's agent, they're doing a disservice to you and your offer winning. That's something that every lender needs to be very comfortable with. And if they're not, as I'm starting to make the theme of this episode, I would start to question whether you should be with that lender or somebody else. There's one more thing I want to talk about, because in Seattle it comes up constantly. And if you don't understand it going in, it can blindside you. It's called an appraisal gap, and it's one of the more common ways a competitive offer falls apart. Here's how it works. Let's say a house is listed at $650,000. You offer $690,000. You're being competitive, and that's what it took. Your offer gets accepted. Your lender sends an appraiser. The appraiser looks at comparable sales. They come back and say, hey, this home is worth $660,000, not $690,000. Your appraised value is $660,000. What that means is your lender is only going to lend against the appraised value. So if you're going to put down 10% and you thought your loan was going to be for a $690,000 purchase, it is now for a $660,000 purchase, and there's a $30,000 gap between what the home appraised for and what you agreed to pay. So that gap has to come from somewhere. Either the seller drops the price to the appraised value, you bring $30,000 in additional cash to close, or you can negotiate somewhere in the middle. And if nobody bends, that's where the deal dies. In a competitive market, buyers often write what's called an appraisal gap clause. It's a statement in the offer that says, I agree to cover up to X dollars in the event of an appraisal gap. It's a pretty powerful signal to a seller in a multiple offer situation, but it only makes sense if you have the cash reserves to back it up. So my advice, before you ever write an offer above list price, have this conversation with your loan officer. Know what your numbers are, and know what you can actually afford to bring to closing if the appraisal comes in low. It's not pessimism, it's preparation. And buyers who are prepared are the ones who close. In Seattle, offers above list price are common. Appraisals sometimes don't follow. The buyers who win and close are the ones who understood this going in. So again, going back to that 2020, 2021 time period, I remember specifically I had a buyer that was looking for a home in a specific neighborhood. The perfect one came up and we had to have it. The home was listed for $400,000. We came in and offered $440,000 for that home, 10% above list price. In the offer itself, we had an explanation that as long as the home appraised for $410,000, my buyers would cover the remaining $30,000 if a low appraisal came in. So what that meant was the home was listed at $400,000, we offered $440,000, and they were willing to come up with cash for anything $410,000 and up. So from $400,000 to $410,000, if that's where it ended up appraising, we were going to have to go back and have a negotiation with the sellers. But they would already know at that point that my buyers were coming in with an extra $30,000, and we were going to have to negotiate from there. It was a very comfortable situation because everybody knew that going in. The last thing that you want in an offer situation, it doesn't matter if it's when you just have an offer or when you're already pending or when you're really close to the closing table, maybe a week or two out, and then that low appraisal comes back. Just having proper expectations set and being prepared goes such a long way. And usually what kills deals more than anything, it's not even the ramifications of something going poorly. It is the initial gut punch reaction to something unexpected happening. So if I didn't have that agreement in our offer that our buyers were willing to cover any appraisal that was between $410,000 and $440,000, that they were going to cover it out of their pocket. If that was just left up to chance and then the appraisal came back low, that could have killed the deal from either side. I don't know if my buyers would have been ready to come up with cash, and I don't know if the sellers would have been ready to negotiate as well as they did. But setting that preparation ahead of time is why the deal continued to go through, why they got the house. And again, they're still in it today 5 years later and super stoked and have a growing family there too. It's not doomsday. You just have to be prepared for everything when you are helping people make the biggest decision of their lives. And especially if you're listening to this and you are the buyer or you are the seller, you need to be prepared for the biggest decision of your life when you're buying and when you're selling these huge amounts of money. So it's not doom and gloom. It's just being prepared. If you're a first-time buyer and you want to walk through any of what we've covered today, the offer strategy, the pre-approval, what programs might be available to you, that's exactly what I do. And as an agent and a loan officer, I can help you think through the whole picture, not just one piece of it. Go to my website or my Instagram at signedandfunded and reach out. There's no pressure. I'd rather you give me a call before you write an offer than afterwards and something's going sideways. So again, you can find me on Instagram, TikTok, signedandfunded. And I actually have a website, scottsellsseattle.com. Super easy to find me. Come reach out. If today's episode was useful, please share it. Send it to somebody who's shopping for their first home. The more prepared buyers are, the better the whole process goes for everybody. Next week on Signed and Funded, we're going to go all the way through to closing day. Episode 9, from offer accepted to keys in hand. Once your offer is accepted, a clock starts ticking, and there are about a dozen things that have to happen in sequence for you to get to closing day. Inspections, appraisal, the loan approval process, the final walkthrough, the closing disclosure. We're going to walk through each step so that you're not surprised by any of it, whether you're the buyer or the seller. This is a wrap on episode 8. I'm Scott Alfano, and this has been Signed and Funded. New episodes every week, one topic at a time. Now go make a good move.